I was super nervous to get on here and talk with you just because I haven't had a legitimate, productive conversation about being trans and what's going on in the community in years.
Okay, so I'm super excited. I got another really cool one. I got another really cool interview. So, I mean, I feel so blessed and so many people, reaching out and having the opportunity to have so many great discussions that our community needs. So this is Jackson, and I met Jackson on Twitter, and he's a 24-year-old FT. Did you go to by transgender or transsexual or FTM?
I use either just transsexual, or FTM,
Okay,
but I
great. So
sort of stepped away from transgender.
okay, great. Yeah. Okay. So me too. So he's a female to male transsexual, and I just gonna have him pretty much talk about his story. I'm super excited to have a discussion with, I want to talk to the young generation. They don't all hate me.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
So go on, Jackson. Let's learn about you a little.
Sure. Well, okay. So I came out when I was 14, the summer after my freshman year of high school. Um, I figured out what was going on with me around fifth, sixth, seventh grade. And it was strange and it was profound figuring out what exactly was happening with me in my head and with the way I felt about my body. But I didn't know what to do with that for a very long time because I didn't have the language at that time, which I was terrified at not feeling something and not having the words to express it either to myself or to somebody else because that made it feel both not real and very real and debilitating. Because when you feel something you can't express, you just have to hold on to it. And if you let something like that snowball for long enough, it can be very detrimental. And I didn't want anything bad to happen. So I got the language that I needed freshman year. And I got the empowerment from a really good gay straight alliance at my high school. And I told my mom, and she was very cool. She was very supportive. And it took her a little while to let me cut my hair because I had, I miss it now that I've been on T for 7 years and I'm 24 and I'm starting to lose my hair, which I'm coming to terms with. And
Hey.
it is, it is what it is. I shave bald and it feels great. But I had this really long, really beautiful hair at the time, and my mom gave me a little bit of pushback on letting me cut it. And we were about to take a trip to first London and then Portugal to visit friends of hers. And we were visiting my aunt just before that. And my aunt said to her, basically, let him cut his fucking hair. And so my mom took me from my aunt's house to the local supercuts, I think, and they just chopped it off. And then we went overseas to Europe. And I essentially started my social transition in Europe, which was weird and fun. And I don't think I was misgendered once there in Europe, either by our host families or people in restaurants, servers, and whatnot. It was just I was.
Do you think that's because you just passed as a male on some level?
I
So
think
people.
a little bit. I think I was just like chubby enough that I just looked like a. I was 14, but I'm pretty sure I looked just like a 12-year-old chubby boy. And my voice was already a little bit naturally deep, but it has gotten deeper, for which I'm grateful.
Yeah.
So I think that might have had something to do with it. And I think a lot of the time in Europe, Europeans don't care what American foreigners are doing in their country.
True. True.
They
Yes.
really don't.
Well, they
Um,
also have a different way of being there. I've been to Europe many times for work, and
mhm,
I think that, well, also because remember how much older they are, right? In terms
right.
of how old their countries are and how they've adjusted to different types of things. And so America's so new, I think. We're always pushing new things on people. We're kind of
One
rigid
thing
in our
after the
thought.
other.
I think also America has more rigid thought. Don't you think so on
I
some
would say
level?
so. I would say
Yeah.
so. Things feel
Yeah.
very free and very like move with the wind in Europe, which
That's
I
right.
like. I
Yeah.
mean, I spent time there. I spent some time in Italy.
Mhm.
Beautiful places, but people are
Right.
really just doing what they do and they don't bother other people as much.
That's
And
right.
here, everyone's in everybody else's business, and it's very overwhelming.
So when you started to transition, wait, how old were you when you first started taking? Were you taking blockers first, or did you take testosterone
No,
first?
I had
You never
already,
took
I was well,
blockers.
No, I was well into female puberty by the time I
Okay.
sought treatment at Boston Children's Hospital,
Oh,
which
okay.
at the time was an awesome program. It was a really good program. It was, I mean, it still is called the GEMS Clinic, the Gender Multi-Specialty Service.
Okay.
Um, and there were a lot of safeguards in place at the time. As soon as I got there, I was seeing, I believe, three or four different people. I was seeing an endocrine specialist, an additional primary care to my family physician,
Mhm.
a psychiatrist, and then I was seeing my private outpatient therapist that I had sought on my own. So I was seeing
Wow,
a
that's
bunch of people.
amazing.
Yeah, there
Wow.
was,
Wow. So did the clinic assign you all of these things besides the outside one? They assigned you
yes,
mental
they
health
did.
care
They did.
and an endocrinologist
Yep.
and
And
what
then
else? Oh,
it was there. They had at the time like a one like head honcho physician who was
okay,
just
right.
a pediatrician because
Right.
it's a clinic for children basically.
Right. You were
Um,
wait, again, I'm sorry, you were four, 14?
I was yes, 14.
14. Wow, that's
Yeah,
so interesting. That's so amazing that you got to experience that at 14.
I know
S-
it was frustrating as a child, but as I look
Yeah.
back on it now, I think it was what needs to happen. I think there need to be many safeguards because kids are impulsive. They don't always say what they mean.
Right.
And kids are, it's very easy to get caught up in things when you're young, to get
Mhm.
caught up and run with them. And that
Mhm.
can ruin somebody's life if they get caught up and run with something that isn't right for them and they go too far.
So, right. So, as a young guy, do you kind of see this happening right now? Now that you're 24 and you started at 14, so that's 10 years ago,
Hmm.
you must see a huge difference in the
For
system.
sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I see young kids everywhere, basically. I can't go on
Wow.
Twitter or Instagram or Facebook without somebody else I knew back in the day
Yeah, I
has
think I lost
a
you for a
younger
second
trans
here.
sibling or somebody's doing
Yeah.
something and they're getting blockers immediately. They're not seeing therapists. They have essentially one like provide all provider who
Yeah.
does their mental health and their physical health and whatever else all at once. And I think that leaves a lot of things to slip through the cracks. And I think that can be very dangerous.
And so could you elaborate a little bit for me? Because I think we pretty much have the same belief system on the
Hmm.
fact that, I went through a system too. Probably a
Right.
little bit more rigid than your system, but I did go through a
Hmm.
system, which I always say is the reason I'm so grounded over my transition. And, 30 years of transition, I've never
Hmm.
thought of anything other than amazing life I have because of it, right? So
Right.
that being said, I feel you're on the same space and you went through the same system that I did. And that's a kind of, do you think we have a lot of a like-mindedness around this because we both went through a more rigid system
I would
that
say
we
so,
believe
yes.
helped us? Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So
I
so
for sure
today
think
there's
it
no
helped
rigid
me.
system.
There
For
isn't,
sure it
no.
helped me too.
It's
Yeah.
that the loss of the rigid system was something I experienced also because when I moved
Hmm.
from I started testosterone at 17 with the GEMS clinic at Boston Children's Hospital,
Okay.
and they at the time they were getting like this insane influx of patients, which as a kid I wasn't really thinking about what that meant, but
Right.
now thinking about that, I wonder like how many genuinely trans people, like kids especially, can there actually be in one city coming to this one program?
Wow.
So I
See that?
moved.
Yeah, that's very
Yeah.
bizarre to me. Like the
Hmm.
upswing, and I don't want to ever think people I'm discounting their desire to transition. That is not what I have these conversations with you guys about. I have the conversation I think
Right.
why you have the conversation because we care. If somebody who isn't really trans is being sort of told they're trans, which to me that's what affirmative therapy is. You're just being told you're
Hmm.
trans without any what you and I went through, which is push. I call it pushback,
Hmm.
right? My therapist pushed back on me and was always constantly asking me, well, why do you feel like a man? What does that mean to you? Why do you think you are? And I
Hmm.
had to actually walk the world without any medication
Yep.
or any surgery as a man to figure that all out, which I think I do call a
Hmm.
safety net. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, right?
I don't either. I
Yeah.
remember one of the first things they had me do when I was 14 years old at the GEMS clinic was I had about a 2.5 hour session with a psychiatrist in which she just pushed like one set of questions after another at me. Some of them were on paper, some of them we just spoke verbally. But I remember there were questions like, how do you feel in your body? Name specific parts of your body that you are not comfortable with. And all these different questions. And I mean, as a kid, a million questions getting tossed at you is going to be a little bit annoying. But I mean, I answered them truthfully, and I don't think my answers have deviated from then until now. And I'm grateful for the long process that I went through because I was a very impulsive kid, and my parents knew this. And I think that's where they didn't have a lot of fears per se about me transitioning, but their fear was it a real thing or was it some impulse that I had grabbed onto and wasn't going to let go of because I'm a kid and I'm impulsive. Um, and so
Yeah,
all
I
these
mean, that's normal.
safeguards kept
Right,
me
but
safe.
how come they're not asking the kids that today? Why are they just saying, okay, well, if a kid says they're trans, and affirm that immediately, or you're going to lose your license as a therapist? That's actually what they're saying to therapists, which to me, that's so
Hmm.
anti-trans. That is so not
I
caring
agree.
about this person. Why would you want somebody to be trans? Because that feels to me like they want you to be trans, not that they actually
Hmm.
want to make sure you're making the right choice, which is why they're there. Because as you and I both know, I'm pretty sure that we're same this way. It on some level saved our lives, but also it's not easy.
It's not
Why are
easy.
everybody acting like this is such an easy? I mean, we have to do surgeries. We have to take hormones for the rest of our life. I mean, I've
Hmm.
had, health problems. I'm older than you a lot, and I've had a lot of health. You're just starting on some level. And so, I don't know. Are you feeling anything health wise in your body, or do you feel super healthy?
I, ooh, that's a good question. I think I remember before I started testosterone, there was like an energetic feeling, sort of what I would describe as like a special breed of like liveliness that
Mm,
I no longer feel. And when I was being educated by my providers on the possible effects of testosterone, the pros and the cons, um, sort of a sluggish feeling was listed as a possible con. I believe that's something I experience, not to a debilitating extent, but I do feel it sometimes, and I know that it's not how I used to feel, but it's also something
interesting.
that I try both with exercise and healthy eating and staying hydrated to combat. Um, and I would say the one other thing health wise that I feel is I do, I've done not a ton of research and I am still in the process of speaking with my current primary care provider about it is vaginal atrophy and the cramping that can cause. And I know you have
Yes.
a super intense story with that. I've
Yeah.
watched you speak on that
Thank you.
multiple interviews before. It's an
Mm.
intense story, and I think I'm psyched that you made it out the other side.
Right on, my friend. And well,
Hmm.
hopefully you get to use the information. I'm a guinea pig, right? You are
Hmm.
too. By the way, you are
Right.
too. So it's not like 30 years ago I transitioned. You transitioned, 7 years ago? And we're both guinea
Hmm.
pigs still. They don't have enough research to be saying many of the things they're saying. And we don't even, so let me ask you this about atrophy. Did anybody ever bring that up to you when they were starting to give you the testosterone? Did they tell you that could be one of the side effects?
Nope, they did not.
Wow.
No, I remember
And
it
they
was
have the
some of the
information.
yeah. I think most of the cons that were listed on the information sheets that they gave me were like cosmetic, sort of, in terms of this could increase your chances of baldness or whatever. I don't even
Yeah, but
remember. That's the one
baldness
that
doesn't
sticks
give.
out in my mind.
But dude, you see exactly what you just said to me. It's cosmetic. Who the care? I'm
Hmm.
concerned more of my actual internal health than I am about my
Hmm.
hair on my head. I mean, I lost my hair
For
immediately.
sure.
Whatever, dude. But it just makes me look more masculine on some level. I actually liked it. But that being said, those are very what you're saying, cosmetic or just like secondary nonsense. Like, who cares about that? Really, we should be
Hmm.
more worried about what's going to happen to our internal system, what's going to happen to our reproductive system, what's going to happen to our heart. We don't
Yep.
even talk about our heart, dude. It's our heart
Hmm.
is actually having trauma attached to it now because of the testosterone, and it could heighten our.
Hmm.
Women actually do get a lot of heart attacks, and being biologically. female, I don't know if that's going to be okay for me to say that, but for me as a biological
Oh,
female, I
for
don't want
sure.
to. Yeah, okay, right on. I don't want to step over your boundaries. But that being said, women have heart attacks, I think at a higher rate on some or differently than men do. So now
Hmm.
we're taking testosterone, we're attaching our heart. No one even talks about that at all. What's the dangers
Yeah.
of that? So I mean, I really want people
Hmm.
out there to hear this. They will. That you have to see. Look at this young guy here who went through the system way after me, and even in a safe system, and they still didn't tell you so many of the cons were cosmetic. What about long term?
Hmm.
I'm the same thing you have. I lost energy, even though I do have a lot of energy, but that's just from me
Yep.
just pushing through. Sometimes I also feel
Right,
like I don't
right.
have energy and I feel sluggish, and that's completely hormones. Right? It is. It's
Hmm.
actually hormones. So moving forward, after you kind of went through the system, then they decided that they could start giving you testosterone.
Yeah, it was a very long conversation. It was a conversation over about a year from right after I turned 17 to right before I turned 18. Um, it was a long conversation between all of my providers at Boston Children's and between me and my parents. Um, and the the main thing that sticks out in my head is that my mom, I think, had some apprehensions about it, but she raised me. She knows how I operate. She knows how I behave when there's something that I actually want as opposed to something that I want in the moment for instant gratification. And I think she understood that starting on testosterone was going to be very big and very important and very positive for me.
Mm.
And my dad didn't fully at the time understand all of the possible side effects, mental side effects, what that would mean going forward in terms of. I remember he was a little worried about. He asked me if to consider freezing eggs for the future,
Mm.
just in case I ever cared in the future to have biological children, and I said no. Um,
But it's so cool that
and
your dad thought of that. I mean, I think that really says a
mm-hmm,
lot about your parents. Of course they're going to
mm-hmm,
be freaked out. Oh, if a parent isn't freaked out, then that's weird, right? I mean, I
right,
that's weird. Why wouldn't a parent be? I mean, my kid feels like a boy and is
mm-hmm,
a girl. Like, of course you're going to be like, ah. So
yeah,
I always think it's weird when parents are like, oh, my kid is trans. Like, what? That's the last thing you want your kid to be. I mean, wow, you're just opening your kid to a life of medication and problems. It's
mm-hmm,
not so cut and dry on some level. But I think it's so great. Your parents seem so loving, and the pushback means they
mm-hmm.
love you. You know that they care
I
about you.
know. I agree.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
agree. If
that's
you don't
very
question the
true.
people you love when they're making huge decisions, you're doing
Life
something real
altering.
wrong.
And
I
also,
know.
let's have some compassion for our parents out there. They're losing their daughters and gaining a
Absolutely.
son. Like, it's
Right.
also difficult for them. It was very difficult for my parents to lose their daughter, but they gained
Hmm.
an awesome son on some level, right? So that being
Right.
said, we have to have this compassion and this talk that parents have every right to question it, and they also have every right to have
Mhm.
feelings around it. They're human beings who brought you into this
Absolutely.
world. Yeah. Right.
Right.
But your parents seem super cool. So your dad made a good point there to freeze your eggs,
Yeah.
but your choice was not to, which
Yeah.
is fine. Yeah. That's
Yeah, the
right.
way the way I explained it to him was I'm adopted. I
Hmm.
was I was never in foster care. I was picked up by my parents from the hospital when I was 5 days old, and I've been with
Wow.
them my entire life.
Wow.
And the way I thought about it then, and the way I still think about it now, is that I've never felt like anything less than a true child of my parents, even though we share
Oh.
no blood.
Oh,
And my
that's gonna make me
youngest brother
cry.
is a
That's
my youngest
beautiful.
brother. Yeah, I have two younger brothers. My youngest is also adopted, and he went through a big phase of like, "You're not my real parents. You're not my real mom. You're not my
Mm,
real dad." And he would
yeah.
like pack a little bag and try to run away once a week. I never went through
Oh,
that. I was always very much okay with my situation surrounding
yeah.
my parents and my family. And I told my parents that when I was 17 that if I ever wanted children in the future, I would consider adoption and only adoption.
Right
And
on.
I stand to that to this day. I
Yeah, I
mean,
have an
it seems
adopted
like the
son.
most, yeah,
Yeah, my
it's
son is
awesome.
adopted.
Adoption's great.
Gosh, are you kidding me? I don't even, he's my son. I don't think any, and we're attached to his
Absolutely.
biological dad, which is also awesome. We're all
Hmm.
like a humongous, awesome family. And so
That's
I
the
think adoption
best.
is beautiful.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm
I
even
love
thinking
that.
about adopting another kid now. I'm not even kidding. But
Nice.
you were how 5 days old when you got adopted. So I
Hmm.
think, and then how old was
Yeah.
your sibling when they were adopted?
He
How,
was a couple months.
could be the
I
difference there, right? The
between
attachment.
yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. So that's so beautiful. What a beautiful story. And so yeah, they're your parents. That's just like whatever. That means
Right.
nothing. I mean, sometimes adoptive parents are better than blood parents. So yeah, that's true.
Hmm.
Parenting is a skill. And so your parents were
For
cool
sure.
about it, and they started letting you move forward with your transition. Yeah.
Yeah. I think
Mm-hmm.
they felt okay with it because it was in May of 2015 when I was 17.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 months before I turned 18. So I think they knew that
Wow.
I was going to do it anyway, and that it
Mm-hmm.
might mean a little more if I did it with their blessing right
Oh,
before it was purely my decision, which I
yeah.
think was really cool. And I think
Sweet.
I like that
Wow.
it is. They're really cool people.
Oh my God, I
Got
love your
some good
parents. I want to
parents
hang
in my
out. I want
deal.
to hang out with your parents. That's so awesome,
Yeah,
dude. So so
yeah, I
so
got
there you go.
lucky.
So there you go, and you're starting to take your trip down, trans lane, and now you're on testosterone.
Right.
And so, were you in school? Were you in high school at the time that you started, or were you already graduated?
I had I graduated the week before I started
Oh,
T.
wow.
Yeah.
Were there any
So I
other kids?
graduated.
Were there any other kids in your school that were trans?
There was one,
Mm,
my best buddy. Me and him are essentially the same person. We're the same
wow.
height, same weight. We've all got a bunch of stupid tattoos. He's five. No, He's 7 days younger than me.
Wow.
And he was adopted from China. I was adopted from the U.S. He was adopted
Wow.
from China. Ended up with white parents like me.
Uh-huh.
I'm half Asian. I'm Puerto
Uh-huh.
Rican Filipino.
Okay.
So me and him, it was weird. We kind of like found an alternate universe version of ourselves, and
Yeah.
we sort of latched onto each other. But he was the only other one, except for like an upperclassman who graduated a little bit before my time.
So
Um,
yeah, I'm asking
yeah,
you
but
that
there weren't
because
many.
there weren't many. But if you fast forward to today, let's say the high school you went to, do you know now, are there a lot more trans kids at the high school you went to or not?
I don't know the
Hmm.
exact number, but the I have a friend who graduated in 2020, um, who said that there was a huge posse of like non-binary kids in his year who would take up like a good third of the cafeteria. They would all sit together. They like took the GSA from the people who used to run it essentially and co-opted it as like non-binary trans super safe space. I don't know what was going on, but
Wow.
that's what I hear. Which I don't super agree with, but
No, no. I
to
mean,
each their
I'm
own, I
cool with
guess.
anyone, however they want to identify, but I don't know how
Right, for
non-binary
sure.
became trans. I just don't understand. That's why I call myself
Hmm.
transsexual because I don't
Yeah,
relate to any of the stuff that's going on. I call it, the umbrella. Again, fine. That's your
right.
space, my friend, and me and you are different, right? So
Hmm.
that's why I think, me and you are the same, but I think we're different than those people over there. But they keep sort of insisting
Hmm.
that we're all trans, so that's very
Yep,
dangerous. And yeah, that's not true. Me
I
and
would
you did
say
a
so.
whole different transition than many of the kids that aren't even transitioning yet, calling themselves trans. So again, another different space.
Yeah,
That's why your voice is important as a young person because I want people to see youngsters like you who are actually going through the system, who are actually taking this seriously as a life changing
right.
space, and that you understand the consequences. I think some people aren't understanding the consequences because, okay, I'm going to go back to when you were at the
Sure.
Boston hospital. They put you through a rigid space. They questioned you. They made you think of it. They made you, they pushed against you. They did all these things. This is what I'm talking
Yep.
about when I say a system, because now you came out the other side and you're solid, dude. I mean, as much as I know you, it
Oh
just
yeah.
seems to me like you're never thinking about this is a wrong choice or detransitioning or right. How is your life today?
Hmm. my life today is pretty good. I mean, in terms of being trans, I don't most days I don't think about it, which is ideal for me because I
That's
don't like
right.
thinking about it. Being
No.
trans is not fun and rainbows and unicorns and whatever that all these other
Unicorns.
people are saying it is. It can be debilitating, and it was for me for a long time because I was it's a feeling of being stuck, but not just stuck, like trapped and chained in a place
Yes.
you don't want to be. You don't feel comfortable. You don't know who to talk to. You don't know
Yeah.
what's safe, who's safe, where you can go, and what will make anything better.
Gosh.
And it was like living in a prison every day. And at this
Yeah.
point, I've been on hormones for 7 years. I had surgery in 2018, 4 years ago. Jeez.
Was that top
Right before I
surgery?
turned,
Did,
yes, that
is
was.
that the only
Right before I
surgery?
turned 21.
Right before you turned 21, you had top surgery. So, and that's fine. You're an adult. So, that being
Yeah.
said, is that the
hmm
only surgery you have? Do you only have top surgery?
Currently, yes.
And so,
I don't have concrete plans at the moment for a
mhm,
hysterectomy, but that is something I would like to pursue in
for
the
sure.
coming years when it
And
is financially feasible.
sure. Well, hopefully you can get insurance to pay for it because now
Yeah.
they're doing that now. And so, do you have
hmm
plans? If it's too personal of a question, then just don't answer it. But do you have plans to move forward on bottom surgery? Are you okay with your anatomy?
Right now, I don't have plans for it. I've done quite a bit of research, and at the moment, I'm not super happy with where
Hmm.
the procedures are in terms of preserving sensation.
Hmm.
And I think for some people, the part matters more than the function. And
Right.
for me, I'm sort of very balanced on that. Like, I would like, if I get bottom surgery, I would like a
Yeah,
functioning penis
that's right.
that
Yeah.
has sensation and has functionality. And I think I'm not super confident with where it's at right now. If that
Yeah.
changes in the future, I'll consider it.
Right on.
Um,
Yep. That's where
but
I'm
right
at.
now, no.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
also, I'll be honest with you, you can totally live life. I have a great life and never went that route. So again, it's a very personal question.
hmm
So I thank you for answering it.
It is.
I appreciate that you
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm cool
yeah,
with talking about it. And
great, great.
I
Yeah, I
also
think it's
wanted to say
important.
that, like, yeah, and about like the hysterectomy stuff too, in terms of insurance, like, that's one of the reasons why I haven't, and for testosterone too, that's one of the main reasons I haven't changed my gender marker on my social security so that it can remain female on insurance. Because if it's switched to male, then they're going to either upcharge me or stop covering
That's right, they
testosterone, and I don't
will.
want that to happen.
No, they'll say
It's
men
not
don't.
cheap.
Yeah, they'll be like men don't get
hmm
hysterectomies, and so which is true. And why I always
Yep.
say, and these other people telling us that we don't have a medical condition is dangerous. Don't do that. When you
Yep.
say that we don't have a medical condition, now that's it. Then it's elective. Everything we're doing is a choice. This isn't a choice
hmm
for him and I. This is actually a real disorder that we had to fix through
It
medicalization
is.
forever for the rest of our lives. So when you start taking us as a disorder or mental illness or whatever you want to call it off the table, you're hurting us. You're making it so we don't get
hmm
to have the things we need to have in order to live in the world properly. So who's ever saying that in our community, they need to stop saying that because that's not my space. That's not my story. I have a disorder and I've dealt with my disorder and you know what I mean? I'm okay with it
hmm
now. I don't
For
live
sure.
in my disorder and I don't celebrate my disorder. I just fixed my disorder and moved on. There's this idea that we need to celebrate our disorders and this whole new world and that's not good. That's not good because you're not understanding it as a thing that it shouldn't be who you are. I'm not trans. I'm a transsexual person who lives as a man. I don't you know what I mean? I think that's kind of so do you live male or you walk the world as a man? Is that your
Yeah, I do.
pronouns?
I've been doing that. Yeah, I've been doing that since I was 14.
Excellent.
I didn't change my name until I was maybe in 19 or 20.
Uh-huh.
Because my birth mother named me, and she gave me a very gender neutral name, but
Great.
it's it's one of those names that like screams trans, even though it was my given name at birth, my legal name. So people would always ask me, "Oh, did you name yourself that to symbolize your transition?" And I'd have to be like, "No, no, no." So then I
It's so
picked there. There was
crazy.
a childhood author. Yeah, I named myself Jackson because there was a childhood author, an author that I really liked, who I used to write letters to in elementary school with my
Uh,
book club.
uh,
His name was Jack, and then one of my babysitters when I was younger used to play Jackson Brown endlessly
oh,
on a loop for me, and
wow.
I
Love
loved his
it.
music. I still do.
Yeah, me too. I
So
love
I picked
Jackson
that.
Brown.
Yeah, I think he's fantastic.
Totally. That's brilliant. Oh my God, that's so
Yeah,
great. Um, so let's move forward now. And so now you're living in your
sure.
life of testosterone and you get your top surgery, right? And you're moving
hmm
forward. So are you going to school or what happened to you during this time of transition? What were you sort of doing in the world?
Well, I didn't go to college
Mm-hmm.
because I knew that if I went straight from high school, I wouldn't focus. I didn't have any energy left after high school, after dealing with mental illness, being
Mm-hmm.
trans,
Mm-hmm.
and all this other stuff. I decided to just go straight into start working
Mm-hmm.
immediately out of high school. And so I've had some really good jobs over the years. I've had some shitty jobs, as
Mm-hmm.
most people
Of
have.
course. Yeah.
Um,
We
right.
all have, my
And
friend.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so these days I just work retail. I live with my
Great.
father and his
Great.
awesome girlfriend.
Excellent.
We live almost out in the woods, which is super nice.
Super nice.
One of my best friends lives in the unit upstairs. We have a two
Great.
family. It's like
Aw, it's
the best arrangement I could ask for at the
yeah, you
moment.
seem so happy and grounded, and I love seeing that in the young generation. I love seeing that you're moving forward.
Mhm.
I want to go back and ask you a question about school. When you were in school and you were kind of
Sure.
dealing with your dysphoria, did you get bullied, or did people say things to you, or was it difficult for you to be in school while you were going through all of your dysphoric stuff?
I would say I'm very lucky. And
Mm.
I would say that there is a lot of Massachusetts privilege. I live in Massachusetts. There's a
Okay,
lot of Massachusetts privilege that I think can be very positive in terms of people who are genuinely trans who either come out publicly or transition and try to stay stealth. That people are very good about it here.
great.
And so I did, at the high school I went to, I went through freshman year living as a female. Hated it, hated myself, didn't want any more part of it. It was a big school. And then I found out that they have a small school within a school for children with um, mental disabilities, mental illnesses, behavior problems, whatnot, that was off campus, and their maximum capacity across all four grades was 32 kids. So like
Mm.
my graduating class was 8 kids when I graduated high
Wow.
school. So I did sophomore, junior, senior year there, and I started my sophomore year presenting as male, using male pronouns, and they had a 24-hour there every day social worker um, who was an angel.
Great.
And I felt so safe with her, and it was such a small space. And I didn't want to risk being misgendered because at the time that felt like the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
So I told her, I said, I don't care if everyone knows that I'm trans. Can you please go to the teachers and go to the other students and tell them that I am trans and that I use the pronouns he and him so that if anybody messes up, either I can correct them or the teachers will be kind enough to correct them,
Hmm.
which happened maybe once or twice, but I was very lucky in high school. It was a very
Wow.
good, very small environment that was super respectful. And I think I benefited a lot from that. And I learned a lot about like independence and autonomy and how to advocate for myself in
Brilliant.
that environment because it was small and very insulated, but very safe. So learning to
That's
advocate
right.
for myself in a very small, very safe environment made it easier when I stepped out to expect positive responses to self advocacy. And I think when
That's
you
right.
expect a good response from something like advocating for yourself, a lot of the time you do get it because when
That's
you're
right.
confident in your self advocacy, people listen to you and they will take you seriously.
Wow, that's so powerful coming from you, my friend, because this is what your generation needs to hear. They're not advocating for themselves. They're
Hmm.
in a mob mentality, right?
Hmm.
They're in this space where they
Oh
don't
yeah,
even understand what they're saying is a compelled speech, or being told how to be trans, or that if they say something off of that, then they're transphobic, or all kinds of insanity. So really, what a blessing for you on some level that you got to be in this space where
hmm,
you learned that you are an individual. That taught you to be an
oh yeah,
individual, not to be trans.
it really did.
Yeah, but to be an
Yep.
actual, you got life skills, friend. And I can see the groundness in you is
Hmm.
so beautiful. I just love it because you actually know who you are. And it's not that you're trans, you're Jackson. And you're going to move forward in the world and figure shit out and get a, career
Right.
and all the things that you need to do. That's why more youngsters need to see people like you who understand what transition. So to me, what transition is about is a means and a way to become your authentic self and then move forward because you're not happy
For
with who
sure.
you are. So I don't under.
Hmm.
So now let's move forward. You seem super grounded. You seem super focused on what you are and how you are this person, and understanding that trans is a sort of space that helped you figure out your problems, quote unquote, and now you're
Hmm.
living life. And so looking now at this trans community, and let's talk about the your generation and maybe younger. I would
Sure.
like to get your feelings on what you see coming out of that community and how you feel about it.
I think what I've seen is when I was in high school, I had quite a few trans friends. Most of whom, except for one, I believe, have remained steady in their
Hmm.
transition. I have one friend who went on testosterone for about a year, decided it wasn't for them, detransitioned from. So their initial transition was from female to male,
Hmm.
and then they transitioned to just whatever they
Okay.
use the term non-binary, but they're okay
Okay.
with any pronouns. They really don't care. They
Hmm.
just identify as a person, which cool, do
Yeah.
whatever you
Totally
want,
cool.
that's
Yep.
fine.
Yep.
Yeah. And they were actually one of the most impactful people in my life in the trans community, because at the time, I mean, my experience is completely binary. I've lived
Hmm.
as a man and I've lived as a woman. I
Yep.
don't like one, I really like the other. And I I don't personally fully understand what it could feel like or mean to someone to not feel like either.
Hmm.
Um, and I think back then when I had that friend in high school, they were very calm, very sort of happy to explain their experience to me in a way that wasn't like going on the defensive or offensive, which I feel
Hmm.
like is a lot of what we get today,
Hmm.
especially from some of the younger people who they demand blanket acceptance and blind acceptance, and then they throw a tantrum when they don't get it. And you can't demand something like that and then get mad when you don't get it, because that's a ridiculous thing to ask
That's right.
for the entire world to accept you. You
Hmm.
can't ask that and expect to get it.
That's right.
And that, I think, is a lot of the problem with what's going on right now, is that people are mad that they aren't getting what they want, but what they want is insane, and it's not doable overnight.
No.
It's like
No.
these things take time. Like it took a
Yes.
very long time for the gay rights movement to get to the point of
That's right.
semi legalization of same sex marriage, because it's still not legal in all 50 states.
That's right.
But it took a very long time. And I think Blair has spoken on this before.
Yep.
Blair White, who we all know and love. But
One of my great
she's,
friends. Yep.
yeah, I was just the other day watching your podcast episode with her, which is
Great.
fantastic.
Yeah, actually
But
what you hear about Blair is not true. She's an actual real person who cares about all of us. I'm not kidding. I would
I
never be
believe it.
attached to a wingnut. That's just not my style. I care about really reality, and she's a reality
Right.
person. So I will always stand with her
She
because,
is.
yes, I will. She is not in any way, shape, or form trying to dismantle anything. She's trying to be honest about, like I am and like you are. We're trying to be
I
honest
agree.
against the
I
dishonesty
agree.
coming from here. So I really dislike that people say the things they say about her. Well, and what you're talking about is that contingent of people that you're speaking of who want
Hmm.
everything now, and if they can't have it or if they don't like a different kind of voice, then everyone's a transphobe. Who are these people?
I know.
Really? I mean, do you have any
The
idea?
generation who cried transphobe.
Yeah. What are
That's
they
what I
being
think
taught?
of them
So
as.
now I want to put your
I
story
don't
on
know.
top of that. If these kids were to have the same experience you had in your
Hmm.
younger days of being in school, and I think they would be different people. I think they wouldn't be angry and misrepresenting. I think that they would be more grounded like you because you've got such a beautiful, loving space to learn how to be an independent person. They're not learning how to be
Right.
independent. They're group thought, right? Their mentality is very hive
Right.
and that's causing I
It
do
is a
personally
hive
think that.
mind.
Yeah, I think it's causing a lot of
And
the sort
that's
of
kind of
pushback.
scary.
It's actually
Yeah,
very
and I think
scary.
mhm, for sure. And I think a lot of the people younger than me who I've talked to feel that pushback is the end of the world,
Yeah.
because they
Yeah.
see it as like a
Yeah.
direct attack on their identity. And it's
Yeah.
like that's not the case.
Nope.
Pushback is there to keep you safe from reckless decisions that could
That's right.
negatively impact the rest of your life, which
Excellent.
is what we don't want. We don't want that. We don't want anybody's life to be negatively impacted
Nope.
for the long term. That's
Nope.
worst case scenario when that happens.
Well, I don't know if
But
you pay attention to the detransition group now, but it's just growing insanely massive on Reddit. And
I know.
I mean, I
Oh
could,
yeah.
I have a lot of detrans friends, people that I really feel
Hmm.
so horrible about. And I don't consider them not part of the community. I consider them actually a part of our community, even though they
I would
detransition.
agree.
Yeah, they're still
I
they
would
went through the
agree.
same system. It just didn't work for them. And how can you just throw them out? How can we
Right.
just say, well, screw you, you didn't do the right thing, which I see some people saying to them, like, well,
Hmm.
it's your fault. No, it is not. With the system we
No, it's
have
not.
today, if it would have been your system or my system, then yeah, maybe something there, but whatever. They don't have a system. No
Hmm.
one's pushing back on them. They're just being given medication because they say they're
I know.
trans. So it's not their fault. It's the fault of the community
It's
and the
and
medical.
the providers who do that,
Yes,
because providers
yes,
have a responsibility to keep their patients safe. And I think just handing out meds to anybody who claims I am trans is insane. I think it's
insane.
irresponsible, and I
Yeah.
don't think it doesn't paint us in a good light,
Nope.
because then it makes, and I don't understand fully how, I mean, I do on some level, but
Mhm.
I don't, I hate that somehow the irresponsibility of providers handing out free hormones to whoever somehow gets put on like people like us.
That's
And
right.
I don't think that's fair, and I think
No.
that's crazy.
It is crazy, but I'm going to say because it's part of our community, not our whole community. There's a lot of people like you and me.
Mhm.
But that being said, there's a part of our community that is pushing back on us saying, "Hold up here. Wait a minute. Slow down. You can literally go I could go right now and type in a website, have a 5-minute intake for testosterone and literally have it mailed
Yeah.
to my house the next day. I can tell you it's a controlled substance, people. Testosterone is a controlled substance where you're supposed to get a I mean, I remember back in the day my pharmacist wouldn't even give it to me. He's like, "What do you need this for? You're a woman." And I'm like, "Oh gosh." So, not that I want that to happen. Not that that's pushed all the way over here and now we're pushed all the way over here. We need to come back to the middle. We need to there's just no middle ground ever. Everything is so far right or far left, and I think there's more people like us than those far right and far left, but us people in the middle
I
are
think so too.
stuck. We're stuck because we can't talk about it. We get called names. It's so weird, and name calling is so immature and weird. I just can't even believe we're literally calling people names. Like, wow, it's so kindergarten.
And I in my transition, I started to see some of the the removal of the safeguards. Because when I left that clinic at Boston Children's, I moved to a doctor at a provider called Fenway Health, which
Oh
is
yeah,
very, it's not completely LGBT, but it's very
yeah.
LGBT centric. They have some great programs, but
Hmm.
they do these days focus a lot on gender affirming care, which I don't agree with. And at the time when I switched to them, there was no safeguards at all to get testosterone. It was a one stop shop. I walked in there for my first meeting with my new doctor at the time. They didn't wait. I know they didn't wait for medical transfer of my records from the GEMS clinic because they sent me home with a prescription refill for testosterone that day. They didn't have me see a
What?
psychiatrist. They didn't wait for
Oh,
my records. I had like a half-hour meeting with a doctor, 15 of which I was just waiting for him to come into the room. And he sent me home with a prescription refill, which I thought, even then, I thought it was kind of
wow.
crazy, even though I got what I wanted. And I knew for me it was okay because I had gone through all these things to get to this point
Yeah.
of being on this medication. And I knew that it was what I needed at the time and it was okay for me. But like anyone could walk in and say, "Hey, I'm trans. Can I have this, please?" And they'll send you home with it that day, which is bananas.
Bananas,
And
dude. I mean, gosh dang
absolutely
it.
bananas.
Gosh dang it. It makes me so upset because this is like hormones.
Hmm.
Look what it's done to us. Look what it's done to
Right.
me. Like, it's just not a joke. None of this is
Hmm.
reversible. What anybody's saying to anybody out there,
Hmm.
none of this is. I don't even care if you're on it for a month. There's going to be something that's happening to it's
Hmm.
a foreign substance in your body. And just Google hormones.
Yep.
If you, without hormones, you're not really walking around in the world. So hormones are disrupted. Your body is
Hmm.
disrupted on many, many different levels. So I'm just
Right.
shocked. I'm shocked that the medical world is so, like, you know, laissez-faire about the whole thing and just so easy.
I
Here you
know.
go. It just doesn't make sense to me in any way. And look at, I mean, so that being said, let's just get down to this situation about what's happening with our community and why there's so
Sure.
much split on the way we are, what we do, who we are, and why is there such a contingent of angry people or angry trans people that only have one thought process and don't understand that we're all individuals first. Just because we're trans, me and you are completely different
Right.
humans. We're not the same. So, but
Absolutely.
why do they want to make us all the same? Do you understand my
I
question?
don't
Like, I
know.
want to know from you,
I
like,
do. I
what do you
do.
see? What do you see?
I I see these days the people I see the most often are, and I hate to generalize, but it's what I see is
Yeah,
like loud young white kids who haven't had a lot of strife or turmoil in their life who are looking for a cause. Some of them
yeah,
may very well actually be trans
sure.
and cool if they found a community and that it's right for them and that's what they choose to do and it works, fantastic. But there's no way in my mind that I can rationalize the idea that every single one of these kids coming out these days is actually trans.
Right.
Because I remember when I first came out, it was like 0.03% of the population. I believe that was the number given at the time, and I don't even want to know
No.
what the current number is of so-called trans people because I just make my mind blown. But I see that's what I see most often. But I do see, at least in private, I see a lot of people like you and Blair and myself with the views on what's happening that we have, but they don't speak about it. And I was that way for a
Yeah.
very long time because I had gotten backlash from um, kids younger than me saying I was wrong, that I was transphobic, that I hated them, and all this stuff. I got um, somebody's mom called me once because I told their kid that I didn't fully understand what their gender identity was, and I asked them like very politely to explain. I was like, "Hey, I don't understand this. Would you please, if you care to and if you would like to, could you please educate me a little bit?"
Hmm.
And they had their mom call me and yell at me, and I was like, "What is this? Like, I don't have time for this." I was like, "I just," because it was one of those. I guess nowadays they call them like neo genders with
I
neo
don't
pronouns
know.
or
I
whatever.
don't know.
Um,
I don't know.
it was something that I didn't understand it, so I asked for clarification, and I got yelled at it by somebody's mom for it.
My God,
Um,
it's
yeah.
so out of control. Like, if you're solid in your space and you're solid about who you are,
Hmm.
and then you can't answer that simple question, that says to me
Right.
something's going on here. So,
Right.
it's just mind blowing, and I feel so sad for people being sucked into something that's not what they are. You don't need to be trans to be, loved or cool or
Right.
whatever is happening. So on some level, I find I get very I feel insulted that people are making this disorder into something you can choose to have. if that makes sense. It's like I would never choose to
Right.
have this
Right. Right.
ever, dude. Not that it didn't make my life better, it did, but I would choose to have been
Right.
born male. I believe in the binary. I believe in biology. I believe in all of that kind of
Hmm.
stuff that they're trying to dismantle. I mean, and it doesn't. So I see what I see as an older person who transitioned for my dysphoric reasons. I see this idea
Hmm.
that they're trying to dismantle a whole space of binary, biology, men and women, and that's what I think the bigger picture is, and why everyone is kind of
Yeah.
in this space where binary is colonialization, and it's the white man who made it. I'm like, what? Wait a minute here. You don't think cavemen? Why did we call it cavemen and cave women? Who invented that? They were actually men and women, and they actually had different roles. We've looked at this forever, the biology of the
Right.
roles. The problem I see, and I think if we eliminated this one thing, this one aspect of the world, which is
Hmm.
hardcore gender stereotypes. If we literally took that out of the
Right.
equation, women could be butch, masculine truck drivers, and nobody
Sure.
would make a big deal
Absolutely.
out of it, right? Or a dude could wear a dress
Right.
down the street and still be a masculine dude. I
Right.
mean, look at Scotland. They wear kilts and they look awesome and sexy in those kilts, right? So,
Right.
and those are
Kilts are
skirts.
badass.
Yeah, so this idea that
Right.
I really do think a lot of the problems come from our gender stereotypes, and those things, just because your little kid is wearing, my little kid wants to wear like purple hair, and he has long hair. So my boy has long
Love
hair and
that.
purple in it, and you know what I mean. My stupid dad will say stuff like, "You look like a girl," because my dad's like 83 years old and old school, and I'm like, "Don't do that, Dad." Like he's a cool, you know what? He's a dude. But my point being, it's that gender stereotype, right? Like, why can't a dude have? Why can't a kid have a long hairdo, and why can't a girl wear boy clothes without being trans? So all I see is another way of we're using trans as another way to sort of shove people into a box, as opposed to just letting them sort of find their space in the world. And you seem to have found your space, which is so beautiful, because I think, your voice is so important at this time. We need people like you seeing what I see, because I'm considered old and antiquated, and the way I see it is just, but that's not true, because I'm connected to young people like you who see exactly what I
Right.
see, right?
I think a lot of the difference in my experience of getting into conversations with other younger people in both the greater community LGBT and the smaller trans community, well, I guess it's not so small anymore,
No.
but is that it the my views and the views that I share with you, and opposed to the views of people who are demanding all this change and acceptance all at once, um, is that I think a lot of them are leading with emotion instead of logic. And I
That's
don't,
right.
emotion's not a bad thing. Every
No.
human experiences emotion. And, but I think pouring every single ounce of all that you have of your emotion into a cause that isn't really helping anybody at the moment is not a great thing, because when you have such a mass of people pouring all this emotional energy and no logic into a lot of their arguments and the things they're fighting for, it's just building up this giant wall between this community and the rest of the world.
Right.
Because if we're constantly asking for things that are unreasonable, if we're demanding blind acceptance, if
Mm-hmm.
we are shouting and screaming when we don't get what we want,
Mm-hmm.
nobody is going to take us
That's
seriously.
right.
And I think for the sake of many genuine trans lives, we need to be taken seriously, because transition happens in a medical space. If we're not taken seriously in medical spaces, then that scares me. I don't
Yep.
want to think about what could happen if I were to stop being taken seriously in a medical space. And
Yep.
thankfully, these days I go to a provider that is purely a trans provider. Um, it's a little they do some gender affirming care, which I'm
Mm-hmm.
fine with, because they understand that my experience is binary. They understand what
Right.
I need. They know I don't feel weird about going in for a pap smear, because
Mm-hmm.
they, half the staff is gay, a couple of them are trans, other
Great.
ones are just super cool. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't scare me. I don't get nervous with that.
Right.
And I feel like at like any standard regular provider that doesn't have some level of focus on trans folks, I would get weird and nervous and have a bunch of anxiety about going
Right.
in for things like pelvic examinations.
Right.
And it's like sometimes trans only spaces can be positive, but I think that medical setting is the one place where I've found it completely beneficial to me.
That's right.
I have not found an entirely beneficial trans only space socially ever.
Because
Ever.
because let me ask you the question: did you transition to be trans, or did you transition to be binarily a male, or to walk the world as male? Do you walk the world as a trans person, or as
To walk the world as a male.
right? So, you know,
I
not
don't
to say
walk
that
the world
as a trans person. So that's the difference between us and them.
Yeah.
Is we really wanted to be part of the world as men, and though we do know our
Right.
biology, and we're very accepting, and I think that's
Absolutely.
why you're so grounded.
Can't deny biology.
No, you can't, and also why you're so grounded, and why I'm sure you got people like you, and you're just easy to get along with, and you walk the world. So you know, you don't seem like an angry kid, and you don't seem angry about transition. You seem very
Definitely
grateful
not.
for your transition, and you're using it and your voice. So that being said, all of the sort of hate, 'cause there's a lot of hate coming out of our community for no, as far as I'm concerned, not the reasons they're trying to say. When they throw that transphobic word around, it hurts me so much because we're really misusing it.
Yeah.
And we're really pushing
Yeah.
we're pushing the world away from us in a way that I really fought to get it. I worked hard for this community for 20 years, you know,
Right.
and the world does like me a lot. I have way more friends outside the trans community than in, and I coexist with the world.
Me
You
too.
know, I walk the world as a
Right.
dude, and everyone's so cool about it. I don't have any issues. And that's why I want to bring people like you on, youngsters who are doing exactly what I'm doing and walking the world and living a beautiful life and seeing. That's people need to see you, because when they see you, they're going to say, "Oh, I get it. This guy needed this in order to move on and become a successful person in the world, not just willy-nilly doing it and then detransitioning." And that's the thing that's happening. And people are like, "See?" They're going, "See? You don't need a transition. You're just going to detransition." I'm like, "No, those people aren't like me.
Right.
They didn't go through that system. Most of them are self-ID. Most of the detransitioners are self-ID'd people. You know that? Yeah. That should say a lot.
Yeah. And I think self ID has gotten a little scary.
Yep.
And I don't know if scary is the right
Well,
word,
it
but
is.
a little crazy.
Yeah. It's
Because
scary.
in some places you can have your documents changed just on self ID, like gender marker and whatever. And I remember I had to get a letter from my psychiatrist to submit
Yep.
with my first passport application when I had my marker changed from female to male. And I remember at the post office when I went to submit it, they had never at that office had somebody come in with a letter requesting a gender change
Yeah.
on their passport. So they called the State Department
Wow.
and got off the phone and told me basically that whether or not I would have the letter changed from F to M would be based entirely on whoever processed my application, whether they personally wanted to give me the change or not. And I was like, okay, well, there's nothing I can do about that.
Wow.
So I just like hoped and prayed that whoever had my application would process it and change the letter. And they did, which
Yeah.
was great.
Yeah. You know,
And
I changed
I
my.
remember just having to,
Go on. Sorry.
yeah,
Yeah.
having to get so many letters for everything from psychiatrists to
That's right.
therapists. Like
That's
I
right.
remember even by the time I got top surgery, everything was pretty much self ID. Like at that time, you could
Right.
get hormones, whatever, walk in the door, walk out with them.
Yeah.
But for surgery, at least it was a long process.
Yeah.
Getting ready for surgery and getting all the approvals that I needed. I needed a letter from both a psychiatrist and a psychologist.
Yeah.
I needed a letter from my primary care provider and any other provider who had seen me for trans-related medical care in the past 2 years.
Excellent.
Before I could even get a consultation with a surgeon for top surgery.
Excellent. Excellent. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
which I
people out
thought,
there. I'm sorry that you don't
yeah,
want this, but it is 100% the way it needs to
right,
be. There is no reason why anyone should be upset about that
mhm,
because all that's, I mean, you have to do
right,
that when you're going to go get a hysterectomy. You can't just say, I want a hysterectomy. You have to like go
mhm,
through a whole, and I mean
right,
that for a biological female or something. They're not going to just, there's systems
right,
that other people have, not just us when it comes to the medical. It's hard even to get medication these days. You have to go through a whole rigid
yep,
system. Thank God they don't give out the oxy as easy as they used to.
I
But
know,
there's a see what's going to happen is exactly what happened with oxy. They overabundant threw it at everybody, and now they have to bring it all
yeah,
back. And then that's going to happen with trans stuff. We've overusing it, and then it's just going to
mhm,
come
I
back.
think so too.
Yeah, it's going to come back for like just hardcore, where it's going to be so difficult to get any of it for us. So that's what
Mhm.
I just really want to bring people like you on because I think your story is so incredible and so beautiful. And I just, I connect with young guys like you. And I think you're the future. We need you to speak up and we need you to be there saying, look, man, this saved my life. It saved your life on
Mhm.
some level. And,
Right.
um,
It
and
did.
yeah, yeah.
I would say it
I
did.
appreciate that you see that and that you're grateful for it. And it wasn't just willy nilly. It's super important that people see that. What happens when a youngster goes through the system is this guy. This guy is solid, and yeah. And I think that that's what people need to see. I don't care what you think about a system. A system is there to help you. It's not there to hurt you. Is there anything you want to
Right. I
say?
mean, safeguards are called safeguards
That's
for a reason.
right. That's right.
They're called safeguards for a reason. I think let me let me think for a
I
second.
mean, I'm sure I'm going to
I
bring you back on. I'm sure people are going to give me amazing feedback. I'm not
that
kidding, and I'm going to have a lot of questions for you. And
would be
I
cool.
really want to push your voice out there, and maybe you can just start becoming more active in the space of talking about yourself and
I
what you feel. Yeah.
I hope I can do that because I mean this I I haven't doing this. I was super nervous to get on here and talk with you just because I haven't had a legitimate, productive conversation about being trans and what's going on in the community in years.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
like, I haven't felt like I've had a voice in this community or even a place because I don't know where to go.
Yeah.
Because I don't traditionally I fly stealth. I don't
Yeah.
really tell acquaintances and friends unless I'm very close with them that I'm
Sure.
trans because it doesn't matter.
That's
It's
right.
not all of who I am.
That's
And
right.
that's what I think is also so crazy about like these people, these young kids who make being trans their entire
I
personality.
know.
And that blows my mind because people finding out that I'm trans is typically the last thing in the world that I want. I just
Exactly.
want to live. I just want to have a normal life. I want to do my thing. I want to go to work. I want to clock
Yeah.
in. I want to clock out. I want to go home. And I don't want people talking about my gender
That's
identity.
right.
Like, it's very personal. It's not,
Thank you.
but yeah, and it's like, that's why I'll fly the bisexual flag all day.
Hmm.
Cool.
Sure.
Men and women, fantastic.
Right on.
But I don't fly the trans flag usually
Hmm.
very publicly, which was another reason I was nervous about doing this because I
Sure.
mean, it's sort of feels like a coming out
Uh-huh.
in a sort
It
of way.
is. It
Um,
is.
but I think that I had recently had a very productive conversation with. I was living in a sober house a few months ago.
Hmm.
I'm an addict and an alcoholic, which is also two words that the medical community is trying to take away. They're trying to.
What?
I've heard people who suffer from debilitating alcohol something, people who suffer from alcoholism, people who suffer
I
from
think it cut
drug
out.
addiction. And it's like the simple words addict and alcoholic are very important to people in our community. We use them to describe ourselves because
Hmm.
it's what they are, it's
Hmm.
what we are.
Hmm.
And claiming those words means that we can do something about it. We can heal,
That's
we
right.
can embark on a life of recovery.
Excellent.
And to think that people want to take those words away from people who have struggled, who have fought just to get healthy and to be
That's
alive is
right.
insane to me. And that's, I
What?
think it's very similar to how I feel about the inclusive language things going on with the trans
Yep.
community,
Yep.
because women have fought for years and years and years to get access to healthcare,
That's
to
right.
vote, to own land,
Yep.
to have good jobs, everything. And people have an issue these days with like the term the war on women, but I think the war on women is very real. And I
Yes.
think traditionally, or trans women are not included most of the time in that war on women, because the rights that people are trying to take away are typically rights that are for biological women. And
Yes, that's right.
I
And then
don't,
those women can get on
yeah,
top of that or underneath it, whatever, however they want to put it. But they're not the
right,
majority of the women. They're very small, and trans women are not women. They're
right,
trans women.
yeah.
We need to say
And that's
that.
okay.
It is okay.
Right.
It is
It's
literally
not,
okay. It's actually the truth. It's actually
right.
the honest to God truth. So this
Right.
idea of this whole woman thing is, you know how I'm upset about it because I don't agree with
Hmm.
that, and I don't agree with
Yeah.
taking away space. I agree with coexisting in a space, and when you
Right.
need to take someone's space, that says a lot about you. It says you're not solid in your own
Hmm.
space. If these trans women, not all trans
Right.
women, of course not, but if the trans women who are
Right.
really saying these nasty things out there would understand what that meant and understand that coexisting with women, they would be accepted in 2 seconds. In 2 seconds, they would never
Right.
have the
It's like,
problems. Yeah,
yeah, and how Blair said on when you were on her podcast, like if you want to be a woman, first you need to learn how to respect women.
that's right.
And it's
That's
like
right.
it's always the most debilitating voices that are the loudest.
That's
Like
right.
she said that anecdote about like the trans woman who was recording in the women's bathroom with like a maniacal laughter, like, "Oh, I'm in the women's bathroom, ha ha ha."
Wow.
That's insane. There's
Insane.
no reason
Yeah.
for any of
Nope.
that. And it sucks that the loudest voices
I
right
know.
now are the ones that are hurting us the most,
Yep.
because like at our core, we're a great community. There
That's
are
right.
many, many, many like-minded, logical, loving people
That's
who
right.
like genuine trans people. We would love to have you here.
Yep.
We would love to speak with you.
That's
Love to
right.
spend time with you. But I have no desire these days to spend time with or associate with people who are damaging my community
Mm.
in the name of what they claim is activism.
That's not activism.
That's
by
how
the
I
way.
feel.
Yeah, I know. I
It's
do
not.
too. I'm in alignment with you on that thought.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are. And so when they see people like me and you, they understand that, oh, what's going on over there is not what's going on over here. And
Right.
there are people who understand coexisting. I don't want to take space from dudes, and dudes know that, and I'm super
Right.
cool with it. And it's like whatever. I'm not a man.
Right.
I am a transsexual man, but I am a man. But I understand that nuance.
Right.
There's a nuance there. It's not.
Absolutely.
I wasn't born male, which is whole different space.
Right.
Okay, so I'm gonna let you go here, but I just want you to say, I want you to say
Right.
where we can find you. Where can we find you? Twitter?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. I'm not very active on there.
Okay.
I'm not really
if you
active
want,
anywhere.
you don't have to. You don't have to put anything. People will just write you in the comments. If people want to contact you, write in the comments,
Sure.
everybody, for him, and
Yeah,
and
I
he'll
mean-
look at them, and he'll get, if he can, he'll get a hold of you or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you'd like to reach out to me on Twitter, my Twitter handle is at Order of Scribes,
Okay, great.
which is, in my opinion, the coolest warlock class in Dungeons and Dragons.
Love you, dude.
I love Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh,
That's
that's
just about
awesome.
all I do most of the time.
I know so many trans people who do Dungeons and Dragons. That's hilarious.
It's a cool game.
I know
you
it
can be
is.
anyone you want.
It is. I
I'm
should get
5
into
feet
it.
tall in the game. I can be 7 foot, big hulking dude.
That's
I
awesome.
can be anything.
You're awesome.
It's a cool game.
You're awesome. I really appreciate your time, my friend. You're great. I feel very connected
appreciate
to
your
you.
time.
You're a great kid, I think. And when I say kid, I mean
Thank
no
you.
disrespect. I hope you know that.
I know what you
I just
mean.
I like playing the old man card. I earned my old tranny card. Right on. So this is what the world will see. Look at us, younger generation and older generation, full on connecting with each other and trying to get back
Absolutely.
to some form of reality in our community.
Any form of reality at this point, I'll take.
Right on.